Okay. Hello and welcome all to this webinar, Transitioning Roles and Industries, My Top Tricks. This topic was the most voted for, so this is my challenge today to deliver a talk and perhaps have a bit of a discussion in the end if time allows. So for those who don't know me yet, or for anyone watching the recording later, my name is Kate Fursova. I am a project professional, a technology enthusiast, a mentor, and a public speaker in the making. I'm no stranger to the topic of my talk today. I have changed about 5 times already, changed the industries about 5 times already. And I have worked in 3 countries. I tried different roles in the past decade. So I've worked in Russia, in Germany, and in New Zealand at the moment. I tried engineering consultancy, constructions, healthcare, IT, operations, research and development, and am currently working in software, data, and AI projects. As for my roles, I worked as a project manager, a quality coordinator, a program coordinator, a business assistant, a project management office lead, as well as I looked into software development and product management roles, but still bounced back to project management. So, whatever I'm going to share with you today, I have tried myself. And before starting any solution, generally my top trick is to narrow down the problem. And one of my favorite tools for that is obviously asking questions. There is a brilliant technique called 5 Ws and 1 H, where you ask 5 W questions and 1 H question to clear the problem and get the solution. You can play with the order of these questions and context of them, but I will stick to this framework in general for the purpose of my presentation flow. So the very first question I genuinely ask anyone who is looking into a change is why? Do you have a good reason for changing industries or roles? And when I say good reason, I mean something capable of truly moving you, something that is you, something that is worth committing to. Think about it as your Northern Star. It is your imperative for the change. And if you're looking for a tip here, you can frame it around 2 options: the cost of staying versus the reward of moving. So your vision or your big reason for change could be around the cost of staying, such as burnout, stagnation, misalignment of values, or the reward of moving. For example, you're looking into personal fulfillment, greater impact, future-proofing your career. To give you an example, are you looking to transition from constructions to IT purely because you just saw some wealthy developers working from their villas in Thailand? What is in that reason that actually reflects you and your pain points? Is it good enough to make you stand up and start doing something? Or another example, or another example, I want to move from hardware engineering to digital and technology because it seems to like that industry, the technologies seem to be developing more dynamically. And I want to have a competitive advantage in the market and be of demand as a professional. So in this second scenario, the big why comes from the personal motivation to be of demand, to grow, and maybe to have secure future. Maybe that person sees their current position at risk, or they have noticed growing competition, or maybe industry stagnation. And those things, they put themselves at risk, which is a great motivation to actually hit the ground running. So your big why acts as a gate filtering through the noise that is not needed, but it also helps you to define further strategy. For example, if you are responding to an immediate financial struggles and challenges, that may require a short-term strategy in first instance. While if you're looking to future-proof yourself, that may mean a slower pace and a longer path. But having a vision helps you to stay focused during that journey, during that transition. So make sure your big why is specific enough as well as positive and inspiring. Because some people tend to fall into the trap of negative thinking and they say their motivation is to escape the toxic environment or burn in workplaces, which is fair. But my trick is to make your big why more positive, such as I want to move roles to feel more fulfilled and be respected for my knowledge. Because this will keep you inspired to keep moving. So to sum up, your big why should reflect you. Be personal enough. Target your current pain points, but in a positive, inspiring way. My next question that I could ask could be what or who? And these questions would help us to define the future state. I personally like to start with the who. For example, I want to picture a portrait of a person I am aiming to become. Who is that I am aiming to be? And I want to compare that person or that portrait to my current self. Are they more confident than me? Are they more skilled? Are they still me in the end? Because sometimes, for example, I'm picturing an entrepreneur that is working full-time, non-stop, and that is actually a big red flag to me because it does no longer reflect my work-life balance criteria or priority. As for the what question, we'd first finish framing the future state, and for that we ask ourselves, what are my non-negotiables? What are the most important things I want to change in my work? What would success look like? And what are the first things I want to see changed? And think through as many details as you can, because those will be your criteria for the future shift. And then we ask a follow-up series of questions to figure out the way forward. Questions like, what is holding me back? What do I need to fix or to do to get me on track? What is separating me from the desired state? And my trick here is to visualize your transition and visualize it in a form of a bridge. So your current state is a point A, and your future state or desired state is your point B. And in between, there is a bridge, every step of which is a step forward or towards your goal. The trick there or the task there is to make sure that every step or every milestone of that bridge is coherent and is linked to each other and not just some random activities in all possible directions. So my second trick here is to think across these dimensions on the slide: the experience, processes, tools and techniques, skills and certifications. For example, my goal is to move or transition to a people leadership role. So my point A is the doer, and my point B is the leader. So I could So I would ask myself a question. What is that doesn't let me formally call myself a leader? And I would look through those dimensions. So, in experience, what experience do I need to show to be acknowledged as as a people leader? Do I have that experience? What are the areas lacking from that experience perspective? Say, I have managed two people on my team, but I don't really have experience of managing larger groups. Then in processes, what does a normal day look like of a person in that role that we're aiming for? Do I understand these processes? Have I actually been through them myself? Perhaps I've never done a development plan for a team member. So I could look into that, into the talent development processes. Then in tools and techniques, ask yourself questions. What tools are part of the essential toolkit in that industry or in that role? Do I know how to work with them? Have I used them before? For example, as a people leader, I should know the tools and techniques to provide effective feedback. So perhaps I would be expected to know the CRC method. If you don't know what CRC method is, it's like a sandwich. Commendation, recommendation, commendation again. Next, skills and certificates. What are the role or industry specific certificates that are broadly acknowledged and respected in that area? Maybe since in software development, for instance, the teams are mostly working in agile, I would need to obtain relevant training to understand that better, or maybe I need a specific certificate just to tick off that box of requirement. So as you can see, understanding the gaps between your current state and your future state is actually a big exercise, and it can include quite a few perspectives. Because the problem is that many people tend to hyper focus on certifications, thinking that virtual badge or a certificate will open all the doors for them. However, in reality, there is more to that. And often your lived experience and skills have far more value than hours of theoretical training. Our next question is when? And normally, when thinking about transitions and change, this question pops up, right? When is the perfect time? And the only right answer to that question is there is no perfect time. But the good news is, if you started thinking about the change already, you are already one step closer to that change. And if you don't think, if you don't have a luxury of time, for instance, my top trick here in terms of the when, in terms of the timing, is go for a side hustle or project pilot to try the new role or industry with a low stakes side project or volunteering role. For example, at one of my previous jobs, while I was working in operations, I offered my help to a team leading the software integration project. So I would be helping them with stakeholder engagement from the operations perspective. And this way, I learned a lot of context of software development projects while I was more in support function, in the support part of the team, rather than actually leading the project with no prior experience. Or another example from my fellow project manager, they have recently moved to New Zealand, and shortly after, they started volunteering with Project Management Institute of New Zealand. So they joined a team, a committee that is responsible for the events organizing, and that helped them gain local experience and connections, but with lower time and effort commitment. Now, moving on to our next question of where. Now we figured out what we're aiming for. The question is, where do I look? And I would recommend two strategies: the adjacent leap and the high growth leap. So in the adjacent leap, we look into the industries and roles that have similar operational models, but different endpoints or end products. For example, that is moving from an operations coordinator into projects coordinator, or from fintech to health tech, or from operational projects to consultancy projects. And the alternative to that is the high growth leap, where you focus on areas with projected job growth or high demand and low supply, or perhaps in your scenario, that could be massive change to yourself, but also a massive win to yourself in the end. For example, that high growth leap can be moving from a team member level to manager's level, or the other way around, from management to the doer, or maybe moving industries with skill shortages, such as in cybersecurity or accounting. And for that, to understand where those gaps happen or where they are, your sources of truth can vary so much. But I recommend taking any publicly available reports with a grain of salt, especially from the recruitment agencies. So expand your pool of resources where you get this data from or information from. My other trick in the category where is called weak ties, as you can see on the slide. So it is a networking strategy where you reach out or connect with people and companies outside of your normal circle or your bubble. Because the truth is, if you want to change, you have to step outside. You have to step out of your box. And generally, most of the people you know or interact with most of the time, they are coming from similar industries, jobs, or interests. They could be your colleagues or ex-colleagues, so they are coming from your comfort zone, from your bubble. But your best leads actually come from people you know least well. And now we have finished with the 5W questions. We're moving into the fun part here with my best tricks. The question how? How do you get there? How do you start? How do you cover the gaps? So earlier we started outlining the bridge between point A and point B, right? We may have already put some plan of action together, like those steps and milestones of the gap, of the bridge in between the 2 points. But we might have only identified a few, or we may have only identified the gaps. We don't know how to get there. So we need to figure out on how we're getting there. And I will walk you through some of my top tricks here. With the first one starting here is 70-20-10 skill transfer rule. This one is a strategic framework to help with your career move. It is an adaptation of the well-known 70-20-10 model for learning and development, but applied specifically to career changes. And the rule is pretty simple. So if you think of your portfolio, your professional portfolio as 100% of your skills, 70% of those skills are transferable skills, 20% should be adjacent skills, and 10% are the new ones. So this is how you would approach your expanding your skill set or training or learning more things based on this ratio. So for example, transferable skills can be project management skills or communication skills, such as negotiation and presentation, for instance. and they should be 70% of your professional skill set. They are directly applicable to any role or industry, regardless of a specific domain, because they are pretty much industry agnostic. And some people call them soft skills or your power skills. So your primary focus should be on identifying those and translating those skills. You must use the language of the new industry that you have identified as your target industry to describe how your 70% solves their problem. For example, if you've led a 5 million portfolio of financial or strategic projects, that should translate into your ability to lead 5 million technology projects. For example, it might not be the true case, but it gives you an idea. Then 20% are adjacent skills or your bridge. It is the smaller but crucial segment of skills that are closely related to the new industry, but require some refinement or contextualization. These skills act as the bridge between your past experience and your future role. For example, you haven't worked with a specific CRM such as Dynamics 365, but you have tried some other before. So you do understand the workflow and how the systems work. And you can learn a bit of more details about the newer system in a short amount of time. Or you have basic or fundamental understanding of the industry, but may not quite know all of the terms and slang that is used in there. So this 20% is where you should focus your targeted learning through short courses, industry certifications, or maybe dedicated reading. This signals to a potential employer that you have done your homework and you're quite serious about the switch. And finally, that little 10%, the new skills or your commitment, is the smallest but most targeted portion of skills that are entirely new and essential for the target role or industry. And mastering this 10% actually demonstrates your commitment and ability to learn. And what this can be software, some specific software, or say perhaps programming language, or a specific project methodology, or unique processes used in that industry or perhaps that company. So these 10% should be acquired through learning and practicing. My next trick is research the job advertisements. And this is pretty straightforward. To understand the needs of the industry and the employers, check what they're asking for in those job advertisements. For example, you may find some specific software or frameworks that are yet unfamiliar to you, but may be required for your successful transition into that role or industry. Next trick is to leverage the free resources. It's not on this slide. Let's move back. To leverage the free resources. And look, for example, there are heaps of free courses from Google, Microsoft, AWS, OpenAI, and others providing fundamental training in information technologies. Also, when some providers launch their courses or their platforms for the first time, they offer them for free or with special conditions to get your feedback for improvement in return. For example, when Google launched their first course on AI fundamentals, they partnered with the virtual training platform who offered the course for free for a limited time to gather feedback for improvement. Also, there are all sorts of boot camps and special group programs, and they are often offered for free, and they connect people with, people of all walks of life with industry leaders who are giving back to the community. For example, about 2 years ago, I participated in the 10K Women AI Advantage program. And the program included both theoretical and practical activities, as well as presentations and connections with the technology representatives from Microsoft, LinkedIn, or ANZ. My next trick is on this slide. That is influencers. The trick is, oh, it is not actually on this slide. I realized just now. Yep, it isn't on this one. The influencers, the trick is linked to utilizing free resources. And it answers the question of how do I access these free resources, or where do I actually learn from, about these free resources. So once you have identified the industry or the domain of interest, look for the influencers in that space. And the easiest way to do so is to look into LinkedIn and research it, or other social platforms. Because these people, they can be industry experts, or maybe they're just experienced professionals in that industry or in that domain. But the benefit is that they're sharing specialized content with their network for free. And often they will promote all sorts of opportunities and resources that are relevant to their specialization. Also, as influencers, they gather quite a specific network around them. So through interacting with their content, you may not just learn about the industry or role, but also expand your network. And look, you don't have to turn that influencer into your role model, but if they align with your values and vision of your future you, they can be one. They can be a role model to help figure out your desired state or your point B of this transitioning. Now, my next trick is going to be networking. And I know that many people are quite hesitant about networking. They still find it awkward. However, it can help with your transition in so many ways. The good news is that in-person network is not the only option, because these days virtual networking is just as powerful. And that includes following people on LinkedIn or other platforms, interacting with their content, and sharing your own thoughts on topics that are relevant to the industry or role that you are transitioning into. My next trick is going to be quite controversial, but hear me out. It is fake it until you make it. So if you want to change, you need to make it real. And some things that make it real, or make it feel real at least, are your network and your positioning of yourself. So once you have identified your destination, make sure your network consists, if not dominated, by people associated with the target role or industry. Surround yourself with information, communications, news, events, and people from the target industry or role. Use that specific slang and start positioning yourself as the person already in that role. You can always add in the making or aspiring or use other neutral terms. For example, if you're looking to transition into a project manager's role, but you're not quite there yet, and you don't feel comfortable calling yourself a project manager, you can call yourself a project professional. In any way, add that identity, add that role or vision of that role to your identity and the way of working until it naturally becomes an essential part of it. My next trick is dummy interviews. And this trick is to help you gather feedback early as well as practice the interviews. And look, we are so lucky these days to have all the smart AI tools. So my first recommendation is to use AI to practice the interviews. Make sure that the AI tool that you're using has the voice feature, so you can actually talk to it and get the vocal response as well. You can provide the tool with the context of your transition, of like have you decided to change, what is the background story, all of that. And you can ask it to assume a role of a hiring manager to assess you and provide feedback. And you don't have to wait for a specific real interview to practice these dummy interviews, because this can be your ongoing practice to help you cover those gaps and get that ongoing continuous improvement. My final trick for when transitioning roles and industries is about your mindset. It is yes and mindset. So you may call it positive thinking. Essentially, it is a tool to transform your thinking and responses into more positive and productive. So instead of saying yes, but, try saying yes, and. For example, a response to the argument about lack of experience, lack of industry experience could be, yes, but I'm willing to learn, which sounds like a trade-off. But on the other hand, an alternative argument could be, yes, and I offer a fresh eye and new perspective to the old ways of working. And this other one actually highlights the value and focuses on the positive rather than the gap in your experience. So as you can tell, transitioning roles and industries is not an overnight task. It's not as simple. I mean, well, in some cases, it can actually be quite an overnight thing to happen. But strategic moves require a proper strategy in place. And a strategy requires clarity, at least the clarity of the end goals. So the main things to do are to reflect and research. Reflect on your current state and research your desired state. Reflect on your pain points and research your options. Reflect on your journey so far and research alternatives. Know your point A and outline your point B. Then start building that bridge in between that is coherent and solid, and that has one step at a time, positive and inspiring. I hope you found some of my tricks helpful for your journey. Thank you for tuning in, and please do not hesitate to connect on LinkedIn and share your thoughts. I look forward to connecting with you. Thank you.